What's going on, everyone? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball, and joining me to do just that is my good friend, my guy, looking great over there on the other side of this call, Justin Boone. What's going on, man?
Man, I'm rocking a Vancouver Grizzlies jersey here, shirt here, so you got to love that. I will take the compliment for looking good. And I'm feeling good, man. We're like almost there, right? Like we have rookies reporting this week for training camp. We have veterans coming in next week. Like it's actually happening. Hell, we have Aaron Rodgers actually reconciling, spending time with his family. Anything is possible this time of year, Harmon. Anything can happen. And yeah, just super excited to get things going here and actually have some news and some beat writer takeaways and things that we can actually react to and update the rankings. I've done a full update in the last week here, but now that's going to become way more frequent as we get the news trickling out of camp and as we get the camp highlights and all these things that we have to make sure we're not overreacting or underreacting to.
I can't wait for training camps, man. It snuck up. It's gotten here fast.
Good.
The summer is, for us, not for the people out there with real lives. Not that anybody should feel bad for us at all, given what we do for a living. But for the people with real lives out there, you still got the rest of the summer. For us, summer's over, man. It's time to lock in. Boone is going to be updating these rankings, as he mentioned, all the time. And that is the subject of today's show. Actually, it is the 10 rankings that Justin Boone feels are most subject to change the most over the next week as training camps get underway. Because as Boone so eloquently put it, there's going to be more news essentially in like once the next 2 weeks than there's been really in the last 2 months. I was talking about this today, Boone, on Twitter very briefly, that we're in like the fifth cycle of all the aggregators tweet about a quote that someone said about DeJohn's dribbling again. I'm like, we're doing this again? That's how badly we need real news. Is like, oh, a team really liked DeJohn's. Like we covered that back in April and May. That's how bad we need real news, Boone. And as you mentioned, we are about to get a ton of it. So before we jump into some of these like specific players and everything, what is your just kind of general philosophy with like digesting training camp news? Like, how do you parse out what's the noise versus what's actual signal?
I don't know that there's a one-stop shop way that we could approach it. I think you kind of have to take it case by case. There's certainly some beat reporters that we have a little more faith in, I would say, that we can feel good about, that have been on the job longer, that have hit on that kind of news. I think you have to make sure the wording is really key, right? Like, does it sound like it's coming from the team? Does it sound like it's coming from actual observations that have happened consistently in practice? Or does it just sound like they're kind of speculating over what could happen? Because there's a lot of that stuff that happens. And it's not that it's not valuable, but some of that speculation can get turned into things that look like real reports, and then everyone reacts to that. So I think that's really important. But that's like the biggest part of the job, right? Figuring out how to react to this stuff. And I just don't think, Harmon, that there's one exact approach. I think you have to go case by case. And that's what we're here to do, right? Every week, we're going to be talking this stuff through. We're going to be updating the rankings. We're going to be updating even articles that we've written, like breakouts and things like that I've done. I go back throughout August and I change all that stuff as we get news, as we get injuries to react to. So there's a lot to kind of take in and filter through. And unfortunately, there is no like perfect filter that you can just find the exact pieces of news that are going to give you the answers. We got to just take it case by case as we go throughout the month of the end of July and into August.
Yeah, figuring out how to weigh those variables is obviously key, but I'm just glad that we're actually going to get some new variables here very shortly. We have a really good show coming up later this week where Zane Dahani from Fantasy Points, who's done a great job collecting all the information from OTAs and mini camps, he's going to join me in the second show this week to kind of talk about figuring out, like, again, a little more of this exercise, what's going to be noise, what's going to be signal here. But as Boone mentions, it's an inexact science. Nevertheless, it is information that we do need to weigh. So let's waste no more time. Let's jump into it here. Let's talk some of these players that you think their rankings are most subject to change based on what we're going to learn over the next, let's call it, month or so at a training camp and preseasons. We'll first start in New England with running back TreVeyon Henderson. Your current rank on Henderson is running back 23, 52nd overall. What are you looking for from Henderson in training camp? Why do you think his ranking is subject to change?
I mean, I'm a supporter, right? We could go back to
Mm-hmm.
last year. We talked about him. We were hyping him up. I think the talent's there. And it's one of those situations where it feels like you were almost like right and wrong at the same time last season because, yes, he
Right.
didn't run away
Yeah.
with the job. He definitely gave up a bunch of work to Ramondre Stevenson. Ramondre Stevenson kind of maintained that lead back job until he got injured. And then when he came back for the playoffs, they leaned on Stevenson again. I think there's some context to that. They were playing really, really strong run defenses. They weren't really great on the ground in those playoff games because of those matchups. And I think they were just looking to avoid any mistakes, the kind of mistakes that, let's say, a rookie running back might make in the playoffs. So I kind of throw out the playoffs a little bit just because Stevenson wasn't putting up big numbers, even though he was in that role. But the thing is, when Henderson got his shot, he looked really good, Harmon. Did he not? He had like huge fantasy days, right? Like we saw him go over 150 yards and score 2 touchdowns in a couple of games during that stretch down the second half of the season there. And in the end, over 1,000 yards from scrimmage. He scored 10 touchdowns. He had 35 receptions. Like that's a pretty good rookie season. And yet, I think a lot of the talk here as we move closer to training camp and as we get closer to the season is that Stevenson isn't going anywhere. As much as I think fantasy managers, the whole community would like to see Henderson just take over this job and kind of have like that Jahmyr Gibbs step forward when Jahmyr Gibbs kind of just kept taking more work away from David Montgomery. I don't think it's going to happen in week 1. It's possible that something changes, and we'll talk about some other younger backs here are going to have to prove themselves. I think Henderson's one of them. We see a lot of the beat writers right now talking about how he needs to get better between the tackles. He needs to prove himself a little more in pass pro, which is so strange because in college he was pretty good at that. And yet he comes to the pros and maybe there's some size issues, some different things like that. But still, that's an area that the coaching staff wants to see him improving. Can he do that? Of course. We've seen tons of young running backs get better in their first couple seasons, eventually emerge as the lead back and then go wild with it. So I'm hoping that happens. I do think that is the most likely outcome. It's just a matter of when it's going to occur. And I don't think it's going to happen in week 1. And over the summer here, if we start to get a lot of reports that, hey, Ramondre Stevenson is getting the first team reps, Ramondre Stevenson is still the leader in this backfield, we're going to see these ADPs switch a little bit potentially because right now you have Henderson going well ahead of Stevenson. You have Ramondre Stevenson as the RB30. He's going off the board a couple rounds later than Henderson at the moment. So it's an interesting situation. I actually, and I never thought I would say this, I actually find myself taking Stevenson in like the 7th round. Seems like a pretty good value. You could get this guy who is going to step up into this offense that last year was one of the highest scoring offenses in the league. I think we expect him to be even better this year with some of the additions. And so both these backs could be effective on a per game basis last year. Henderson was the RB25. We saw Ramondre Stevens be exactly what he is going as an ADP this year. He was the RB30 in fantasy points per game last year. So it's an interesting backfield. It's one that I want to invest in. And I actually find myself taking a little more Ramondre Stevenson in recent drafts.
So in a way, it sounds like you almost think there's more maybe potential for Henderson to go down in your rankings than there is for him to go up. Because that was going to be my question is what do you think you would hear out of camp that would push him up higher to say like maybe the running back 20 zone? Because I think that's the harder thing for me, just as someone that I think was a little more skeptical of what Henderson did on a consistent basis last year. I mean, there's no question he put up the stats when Stevenson was out, but I think a lot of that was driven by explosive plays, which I'm never the person like, well, take away their best plays and they actually weren't that good. Those best plays still count, but I think it wasn't like it didn't prove the case to me that like, oh, he should have been the starter all along. I think he is still effective in that kind of change of pace role, but still, Boone, even outside of just Henderson and Stevenson, them coming back and being the duo, there's a lot of new variables in this New England offense. Like, how does A.J. Brown change that from a coverage standpoint? Like, what they're going to face in terms of, two high defenses, fewer guys in the box, like Romeo Doubs being a more viable threat. Drake may be taking a step forward. Henderson himself may be taking a step forward. So I think even though the backfield is the same, the two guys, I'm really curious if you share my opinion, which is just, I want to be reading a lot of like positive news about the other variables around Henderson, which in a weird way might make him more of an attractive pick to me.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right that I don't see a lot of paths over, the next month for his value to move up, right? It's just unless Stevenson gets
Hmm.
hurt in training camp, I don't really think that's going to be the case. I don't think we're going to see a scenario where he runs away with this job in August and enters the season as even 50-50 in that backfield. So right now, I'm looking at it as early in the season. We're going to have Stevenson be kind of the guy, the lead back. We're going to see Henderson still get involved in passing plays, still put up some okay stats, be more of that RB3 flex option. And hopefully over the course of the season, we see that transition happen where Henderson eventually takes over that role. The draft capital's behind him. I think he's the better talent. I think he has more juice. And yeah,
Hmm.
both these guys are going to be involved. And I think because of some of those changes that have happened, some improvements on the offensive line that I think we're hoping to see this year, bringing in those receivers, like you said, drawing a little more away from the line of scrimmage, I think both these backs could pay off in fantasy this year. And it's just a very rare scenario where you have the guy that at the beginning of the season right now, I think we're projecting to be the lead back actually going much, much later fantasy wise. And I don't really think that people need to jump on one or the other. That's the tendency that people have, right? They're really strong about one player, really strong about the other. I'm willing to take both these guys, not on the same teams based on where they're going, but I want to invest in this offense because of all these positive changes, because they were already good last year. And I think having Henderson and chasing that potential breakout as it could happen as the season goes along, or having Stevenson, who could start strong and maybe even hold on to that job a lot longer than fantasy managers or a lot of fantasy managers would like to see him do. It's just a great situation for fantasy. So why not take shots on both these guys if you're in a bunch of drafts like we are?
Yeah, I hope that Henderson is just better as an individual player, and I hope we read a lot of like really positive news about what this offense looks like in training camp, joint practices, and everything like that. Because I do think those are the kind of key variables to take in here. And I'm with you. I don't think you necessarily have to flag plan on one or the other because they're both kind of going in interesting areas right now. I just typically find myself going with the guy that's cheaper. That is not the case in the next backfield that we are going to talk about here, because I do like this player that you're highlighting here as a potential target, but we got to get a lot of information here over the next month or so. That is Bhayshul Tuten, Jacksonville Jaguars running back, another second-year player. You've got him going basically right behind TreVeyon Henderson in your rankings right now. Running back 24, 54th overall. What are you looking out for that could make his ranking a little bit subject to change in the next month or so?
Yeah, I'm slightly ahead of ADP there. He's going in the 5th round. He's going as the RB25 ADP wise. And this one's kind of different, like you're alluding to, than the Henderson situation because Tune's not going to face as much competition. I mean, some people like Chris Rodriguez Jr. I don't really think Chris Rodriguez Jr. is ever going to be the answer in this backfield. Could he be a contributor? Could he be part of a committee like he was in Washington? Absolutely. But this is a guy that doesn't really offer much in the passing game. I mean, he's never had over 500 rushing yards in a season. He's never convinced the coaching staff to make him that guy. And I know people want to point back to, okay, well, in college, there's a connection with Liam Cohen, and maybe this could be his chance.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the case. And it certainly doesn't help that he joins this new team. He has a foot injury. He's sidelined in OTAs. We don't know when he's going to be back. We expect to be back in training camp, but we're not 100% sure if it's going to be right away in training camp. And that's going to make it really tough for him to carve out a role. You're losing out on all these really important reps in the offseason. And that's kind of opening the path up for Tuten to run away with this job. And I don't know that he is ever going to be a workhorse back. He's not really that kind of guy, I don't think. So I think we will have Rodriguez involved. I think he'll be, take some early down touches. He'll get some short yardage work. We're going to have LaQuint Allen Jr. also in the mix on passing downs. But Tuten, to me, profiles as the guy who should be leading this backfield. We talked all offseason last year about how the front office loves him, all the reasons that they wanted to take him. I think they envisioned that he could potentially emerge as that guy. But this is one where it's far from proven, and he doesn't have the same kind of draft capital that Henderson has. So he still has a lot to prove, and he's going to have a good runway to do it here over the next month or so. But we're going to need to see it from him. We're going to need to hear these positive reports. And he is a guy that I think if we do start hearing those positive reports, if Chris Rodriguez doesn't get back very quickly in training camp, all of a sudden, I think Tuten could start rising. I think his ADP, and I think he could make a jump in my rankings if we see that play out.
Yeah. I think that that's right, and in a way, I kind of don't want that to happen. I mean, I do want good things for Bhayshul Tuten because I think he's a really attractive pick in this year's like running back group. I think he's got a good skill set. I think he fits the mold of what the run game looked like last year under Liam Cohen, which is very outside zone based. I think that Bhayshul Tuten's a great fit for that. But like running back 24 is the perfect price for that guy who doesn't really have like a proven track record, has some good advanced statistics last year, but wasn't, like totally perfect in that regard. Like there's some blemishes you could pick in his profile. I think watching him, like it was a up and down product as you'd expect for a day 3 rookie draft pick. But yeah, again, like running back 24 is perfect. Like I kind of don't want him to become like the running back 19 or 18 and kind of get that breakout more so priced in. So in a weird way, I don't know if that's possible because if we get good news, he is going to be a riser. And yet I buy him being a riser because he's a good candidate for a breakout this year.
Yeah, for sure. And the drumbeat's kind of already started, right? Like the beat writers were talking him up in OTAs that he was looking good. We saw flashes from him last year, right? Like he was a pretty solid player as the number 2 back in this offense. So he deserves his shot. And if we get some of these highlights out of practice, if we get some of these positive beat writer reports, is he not the kind of guy that you could see go from being a 5th round pick in ADP to all of a sudden now we're talking about him at like the 3-4 turn or something like that? Like I think that's well within the range of outcomes. And yeah, he only now has the wind at his back with Rodriguez getting a late start in this offense.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if whereas I agree with you, Henderson has maybe some downward mobility in the rankings. I'd be very surprised if Tuten gets any cheaper essentially here. I think that would be surprising to me. Not the last time we're going to talk about Bhayshul Tuten here this week on the show. I know Zane's got a lot of notes on him and what he's heard so far out of OTAs. So we will stick though with the Jacksonville Jaguars in a situation that we never talk about here on this show. I don't think we've covered this group very often. That is the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver room here. You've got Parker Washington at wide receiver 29, 58th overall as someone that you are going to be keeping an eye on in terms of where he's going to be ranked for you based on what you hear the next month or so. So Boone, give me the state of the state on the wide receivers, one of the more fascinating situations to watch over the next month.
Yeah, his ADP varies wildly depending where you're looking. If you look at sort of the Fantasy Pros consensus ADP, where they take a bunch of ADPs, including Yahoo's, you're looking at him as an 8th round pick, wide receiver 40 overall. I've seen him go as early as the 6th round. There are some people out there that are very, very high on him. I find myself to be one of them. At the start of the offseason, I wasn't totally convinced. I wasn't sure what they were going to do. Travis Hunter's role in the offense, but we've gotten, I think, a little bit of clarity here with it. Really seems like Travis Hunter is going to play more on defense this year, going to be more of a part-time player in the receiving core on offense, and we'll probably have to have an injury for him to really see his role on offense significantly grow. At the same time, there's been a lot of steam behind Brian Thomas Jr. and the fact that he maybe had some injuries last year that were holding him back, and that maybe looks more comfortable in the offense this year. And could we see him have a bit of a rebound season? Harmon, I'm landing with these two guys going, why not take shots on both of them? And I know I'm hedging a little bit in that way. I have Parker Washington higher. I did peek at your rankings. I think you have BTJ slightly higher than Parker Washington. But I'm willing to draft both these players. If I have to pick between them, I'm going with Washington. It was the way he finished the season last year, right? Just so strong, absolutely crushing it. He puts up over 90 yards and or a touchdown in 5 of his last 7 games. That included the Week 13 contest where he left. He had a hip strain, had to leave that game early. Was the wide receiver 19 in fantasy points per game over the final 9 weeks. And that was really when the offense kind of found its groove. And what we're hearing this offseason out of Jacksonville is that he looks great, that he's the guy who's next in line to get an extension from this team. And it doesn't hurt that the schedule this year is going to be very good, because the schedule down the stretch last season, I think, certainly helped this offense find their rhythm.
Sure.
But this year, Harmon, the 6th easiest fantasy schedule for receivers, the 14th easiest for running backs, kind of middle of the road there, the 4th easiest for quarterbacks, the 9th easiest for tight ends. They're going to have a fairly soft slate to go up against. And Parker Washington and Brian Thomas Jr., they're not the same receiver, right? These guys complement each other. I think BTJ is going to do more of his best work in a downfield game. You're going to have Washington, who I think can line up all over the formation, but he's most dangerous out of the slot. I think both these guys could really get going in an offense that, again, same as the backfield, I want to invest in. I want to find that guy who's going to be the next star in this passing attack. And for me, that's Parker Washington. Sounds like for you, I think it's BTJ, but are you with me that you're willing to draft both these guys and take shots on who could be that number one option in Jacksonville in 2026?
Yeah, my kind of opinion on this group is that I think it's going to be I think in a base case where everybody's good and healthy and whatever, I think it ends up looking a lot like the Packers in recent years, where it's kind of a 4-man rotation, which I know sounds annoying on its face, but
doesn't sound like a great thing. Yeah.
Here's the thing though, right? Like when chaos hits, and chaos just generally does hit NFL teams, like what if one of these guys gets injured and then that rotation slices back? Like, we still expect this to be an efficient offense. We have a lot more faith in Trevor Lawrence now than we did 365 days ago. That is for sure. He really took well to the offense in the second half of the year. And so let's say one of these guys get hurt, maybe two of these guys gets hurt, or, you know, the whole tight end thing doesn't come together and we get more of a route consolidation for one of these guys, a lot like we got with Christian Watson last year for the Packers. Like, the Packers, you know, kind of planned to be very rotation heavy, and then Jaden Reed was hurt. Matthew Golden was kind of in and out of the lineup and wasn't really playing all that well. So, you know, Christian Watson became the guy. So can one of these guys be the Christian Watson of this year, where they're probably planned to be more of a part-time player, but just out of chaos and injuries and necessity, and they're also just a good player? You know, I think that could happen. By the way, that could also be Jacoby Myers. That could also be Travis Hunter. So I'm with you that the right answer is to take shots on these guys. It's just figuring out like what the order is going to be for your drafts and for your rankings. Right now, you're right. I have BTJ higher, and actually kind of like in a just a slight tier higher than Parker Washington, just because I think his ideal role as the X receiver lends itself to being on the field all the time, as opposed to Parker Washington, who's more of that slot player. But that doesn't mean that Washington has to be a wrong answer. Because I mean, shoot, BTJ could be a wrong answer based on what we saw last year. I think that you're right though, to take shots on all these guys, and really what we hear over the next few weeks, like who is the guy that most likely is going to be on the field the most. I think that's the key to kind of figuring out what the order for these players is.
And if you can get Parker Washington in the drafts that I'm in, it tends to be BTJ that gets taken first. If you can get Parker Washington in this range, though, like the 8th round where he's going in consensus ADP, you could pair him up with Trevor Lawrence, and that's a nice little tandem to get in the 7th, 8th round. I've done it a few times here. I did it in Scott Fishbowl. Those weren't the exact rounds because it's a little different. The scoring in Scott Fishbowl this year is quite unique and favors receivers definitely, and it's super flex, so you're playing 2 quarterbacks, all those sorts of things. But Trevor Lawrence was my second quarterback, and I came back around and I got Parker Washington to pair with him. And that's something that I definitely want to do on a lot of teams this year. And I'm willing to do it with BTJ, even though he's a little more expensive.
Yeah, Scott Fishbowl is a good format for BTJ this year. I thought about BTJ at one of my picks in Scott Fishbowl, which was really fun, by the way. I went to the live draft in Richmond this weekend. I brought my wife with me. First time she's ever been to a fantasy event like that, so she really saw what a cool guy I am, you know, in real life. But actually, it was awesome. Everybody was super cool, and she had a lot of fun making. She got to guest shot one of my picks, and it ended up being Jalen Coker in the 10th round, because I think based on how I've talked, she thinks that Jalen Coker is the best player in the NFL. So Scott Fishbowl was fun. I thought you had a pretty good team as well.
Well, I'm smiling because I remember when I saw you post that your wife was there and going to make a guest pick for you. I just realized what I responded to that tweet with, which was, I hope she's going to use my rankings when she makes that pick.
Yes, you did. Wait, why did you just remember now? You forget what you tweet?
I totally forgot what I had sent to you. I was actually just about to go see the Odyssey right before I sent that. Oh. So yes, that is a big reason why I completely forgot. Went and saw the Odyssey on the weekend.
I mean, very fair. If you're weighing the Odyssey over, you know, our Twitter interactions, my feelings won't be that hurt. But yeah, again, big shout out to Scott Fish, Fantasy Cares. Sean, who was kind of the leader to put that event together in Richmond, was awesome. I will definitely be going back next year if we do it again. Scott Fish Bowl continues to be an awesome thing every single year, whether you're doing it online, offline, whatever, for a great cause, the whole deal. So we're going to take our first quick break. We come back. We've got a rookie running back that we are definitely going to be locked into for news updates. We will get into that right after this. All right, we're back talking fantasy rankings that are most subject to change for Justin Boone here as we get into training camp. Let's talk Jadarian Price, rookie running back of the Seattle Seahawks. You've currently got him at running back 25, 62nd overall. And Boone, there's already been, like, if we want to talk about drum beats heading into training camp, there's already been kind of what I would call like a tempering, sort of drum beat on, like, tempering the enthusiasm for Jadarian Price drum beat heading into training camp. But what are your thoughts on that? What are you looking to hear and see out of the rookie over the next few weeks?
I'm kind of shocked by it. And I say that as someone who really wasn't the biggest Jadarian Price fan leading up to the draft. I'm just shocked with the way this rollout has happened for him, getting that first round draft capital, going to the defending Super Bowl champions, a pretty good offense, an offense that wants to run the ball, an offense that moved on from Kenneth Walker. He is no longer there. Zach Charbonnet, the number 2, is not coming back anytime soon. He's another guy that we've seen a bunch of different headlines about. This dude tore his ACL within this calendar year. It was in January. We are not going to see him meaningfully on an NFL field until the second half of the season. And even then, in the first year that a running back comes back from a torn ACL, they're normally not as good, right? Like, there's going to be a little bit of a ramp up there. So I really don't know what we're going to get from Charbonnet this season. And so we have this talented rookie running back with very strong draft capital and that good offense. And everyone's worried about George Holani. I mean, Harmon, I remember around the draft when Price went there, we were joking that, oh no, our dynasty shares of George Holani, oh no, what's going to happen to them?
They're
totally
back.
Done, right?
They're back.
I don't know if they're back. I don't think they're back. I think he'll be involved.
Boone.
He'll be part of the backfield for sure. But to be worried about George Holani and Emmanuel Wilson preventing a strong rookie running back from taking over this backfield, that just seems so odd to me. I'm not falling for that. I've actually started drafting him more because when you look at some of the builds, you get to this range in the draft where he's still around in the 6th or so. You can take him as your RB2, but often your RB3. I'm taking that value all day long. I think this environment, it makes complete sense for a guy having a fantasy breakout and having a really good season. And I'm shocked. I really don't understand this one, Harmon. You think it's going to be more of a committee than I'm acknowledging here? Because I don't get why people aren't more excited, not just about him, but we'll talk about some other rookies here that this season, it just doesn't seem like there's like that rookie excitement. And maybe that goes back to everyone talking down this draft class, but there's still some good players at the top of this draft. And I don't get why people are very hesitant, it seems, to take these guys with meaningful fantasy draft picks. They're letting them fall quite far in drafts, and I'm scooping up that value all day long.
Okay, so here's the quote from Mike McDonald we're showing on the screen if you're watching with us on YouTube that's made the rounds the last week or so that's got people a little freaked out about Jadarian Price. He said, quote, Jadarian Price is going to run wide zone. He's going to run some gap scheme too. The pass game, he can come alive too. He has great specialty. He's a great special teams player as well. The kick return stuff, we'll see how it shakes out in other phases. Obviously, people have latched onto that kick return stuff part of the quote. Of course, remember when Kyron Williams famously was going to be the Rams punt returner one year and then went on to be like one of the better fantasy draft picks you could make at the running back position. So obviously people freak out about this stuff too much. I think the TLDR sort of kind of digest for this whole Jadarian Price thing is like, if he can't come into training camp, Boone, and clearly just, and maybe even we'll call it September, and just blow away Emmanuel Wilson and our guy George Holani. Well, he was never going to be that good. He just wasn't that good to begin with. And, he was overdrafted as a first round running back, the whole deal. I think that's like the TLDR kind of read on this whole thing. But here's I'm just going to give you like the devil's advocate case for why Price maybe is not a good draft pick this year. One, we're talking about first round draft capital. He was a 32nd pick. And did the Seattle Seahawks even really want to make him the 32nd pick? they wanted to trade out of that pick bad. You know, they maybe wanted to make him the 36th pick. And then it's like, well, early second round, you know, then we start splitting hairs with all that. That's kind of one part of it to me. Two, the Seahawks were a really good offense last year, but like I've got like a kind of formula for composite offensive score and everything like that. And they're like 12th best offense in that. Could you see them being the 16th best offense this year without Kubiak, without Kenneth Walker? You know, maybe some slight regression from JSN. Not that he's going to be bad, but just maybe slight regression after historic season. I think that's very possible. You know, offensive line injuries. I don't know. That would be kind of the devil's advocate case. And then we're talking about like a guy who never was a workhorse back in college. You know, maybe a little bit overdrafted on an offense that might be due for some regression. I think there are some warning signs here for Jadarian Price, how it might not work out, including the history of these late first round running backs. But the reality is, to your point, if we come into training camp, it's just like, okay, well, Price is the starter. He's so much better than everybody. This is like a non-talking point as we get into the regular season.
I mean, they have the 5th easiest fantasy schedule among running backs, but Harmon, I just keep coming back to, if not him, who? Even if there's regression on this offense, someone's running the ball. Someone in that backfield is putting up stats. And is it really going to be George Holani? Like, if Zach Charbonnet was healthy, it's be a completely different story. If we thought Zach Charbonnet was going to be back in week 4, completely different story. But we don't know what we're getting from Charbonnet this year, and we don't know when he's coming back. And in my mind, it won't be until the second half of the season. And if you're worried about that, guess what? You can take Charbonnet in like the 11th or 12th round and actually just pair him with Price, who you're also getting at a discount here. And now you probably have the Seahawks backfield for 2026. I could see a scenario where he doesn't end up being a star. I don't think he's a superstar back. I think he's a good back in an offense that really, really is going to want him to take this role. And how many times, Harmon, have we seen rookies get downplayed this time of year? I mean, whether it's, you know, not that he's Jamar Chase by any means, but Jamar Chase dropping the ball in practice. Oh my God, we got to bump him down, right? Or is this just a coaching staff making the rookie earn his place? I think that's far more likely here. So we'll revisit it, and that's why we're talking about him right now. We're going to revisit it in the coming weeks over the next month, and before week 1, we'll have a much better idea. And yes, this could move around. I don't know that he's going to fall much further than this, but I could certainly see him rise more if we start to get some more positive reports about him coming out of training camp.
Yeah, I said this on a show last week. I would love to know what Zach Charbonnet's peptide routine is like so that we can gauge exactly how early he's going to be back. But since we probably won't find that out, we will just have to settle for like what the rotation is with Price and everything. Because, you know, even if you're skeptical about him, which maybe I have some more skepticism than Boone does, the reality is like outside of maybe one more back that we might talk about later on the show, he's the last guy to me where I see him as like a true upsides, like real home run swing in his range. So that's why he's somebody that we must like follow and pay a lot of attention to here over the next few weeks in training camp. Let's get to another rookie here, a receiver, Makai Lemon, Philadelphia Eagles. Boone, I gotta think you're pretty way ahead of consensus on this ranking here. You've got him at wide receiver 31, 72nd overall. What are you looking to see out of Makai Lemon, who has definitely had a quiet offseason so far because he had a hamstring injury in OTAs and minicamp?
So yeah, ADP wise, he's wide receiver 38. He's going off the board in the 8th round. So I'm certainly a lot higher. And anyone that follows the show probably won't be that surprised about this because he was my original wide receiver 1 in this class. Really, really liked the player. And then made some changes once we had landing spots because of Carnell Tate going to the Titans. And I think having that more obvious early opportunity to be the number 1 in that offense. But man, if Lemon had been out there and he wasn't out there in OTAs, he's dealing with the hamstring injury. So I think people might be scared about that. If he had been out there in OTAs, I think we would have seen that hype train start a little bit more. I think there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this Eagles passing attack. AJ Brown is gone. We knew that was going to happen. It's finally happened now. But also, I think people are scared about what they saw last year from this offense, from this passing attack. We're getting a new OC in there, Sean Mannion. I think he's going to be a little more creative with how they approach things this year. And I think really just Lemon hasn't gotten started because of the injury. We didn't see much from him in OTAs and, you know, rookie camp. Now he's going to show up by all accounts. He's going to be healthy. He's going to be out there from day 1 in training camp. And I think we're going to start to see the kind of player that he can be in an offense that is going to be better, that hopefully will get a little better injury luck this year, that will get the bump from the new OC, and that has this like massive hole that AJ Brown has left. So there's going to be a lot of targets available for a first round receiver. And again, Harmon, do you think it's like do you think people are just down in this class? Do you think it's like the Marvin Harrison Jr. of it all, where people had these great expectations for certain rookies in recent years and got burned by it? And so now people are a little more hesitant to take these guys as early, because it seems crazy to me that you can get Carnell Tate in like the 6th round. You can get Makai Lemon in the 8th round. You can get Jordan Tyson around that same range, 7th, 8th round. I could see any of these guys blowing up in year one and having big seasons. And to get them in that range where you don't even necessarily need them to be a starter on your team right away, you can get them there and just kind of wait and let it play out. It seems like great value to me.
I'm so glad we're talking about this guy and this situation, because like I did my initial rankings and projections, and I was like, man, I'm really low on Makai Lemon, and I don't like that. I kind of fall into that group that you're highlighting here. And I think if you're asking me why that might be, I think there's two parts of it. One, this wasn't like a great class on paper necessarily, but that doesn't always matter. You know, the 2024 class was supposed to be this great wide receiver class on paper, and that's been a little bit slow to take off those guys. Whereas like the 2023 group, right, that was not supposed to be the strongest receiver class. And, you know, obviously like Puka Nacua, day 3 draft pick, he's been incredible. But like JSN's one of the best receivers in the league. Zay Flowers super underrated. You know, Jordan Addison's been solid. Like, you know, it's like that's a good group right there. But also to that point, another reason why I think I keep kind of breaking ties maybe against Lemon, and this might be stupid, is that there's just a lot of receivers I really like in the 30s and early 40s. And I think that the fantasy hive mind is a little, and maybe I fall into this. I'm trying to look myself in the mirror on this one, has maybe over indexed on like it's maybe not the perfect stylistic fit for Jalen Hurts, who really kind of struggles to throw consistently over the middle of the field. All of that, you know, is he going to open the season in 2 wide receiver sets, or is that going to go to Dontavian Wicks, who has history with Sean Mannion from the Green Bay days? I also think if Lemon, you know, was healthier during OTAs and, you know, he's getting some cool clips out there, he's probably a few spots higher. But I'm actually going to, so I say all that, and I say I'm a little lower on Lemon than you in the rankings right now, actually significantly lower. But let me throw you a theory out there that I kind of started take shopping last week. I discussed this on Reception Perception last week. If we sim the season 10 times, how many out of those 10 times do you think Makai Lemon straight up outscores Devontae Smith? Because I don't think it's 0 times. And the reason I'm thinking about this is because everything comes back to the Bears wide receivers. One of the things I've said about the Bears receivers is that if you want to be much higher on Luther Burden than Rome Odunze, one of the reasons that I think it makes sense is that Burden is going to get a lot more of the layup targets. He's going to get screens. He's going to get manufactured stuff, quick game, the whole deal, whereas Odunze is going to be more of that big outbreaking, in-breaking route player, you know, boundary guy, the whole deal. Was that not like Devontae Smith is going to be that guy? He's going to run the perimeter X receiver routes, whereas Makai Lemon probably going to get a lot more of the layup stuff out of the slot. All of that. Yeah, I think he can play Z receiver. I think he can run outbreaking routes. Like, he's not just going to be a middle of the field guy. So if Devontae Smith is running more of the quote harder routes, you know, against press man coverage as the X receiver, Lemon is this layup guy, especially if Jalen Hurts is like struggling in the new offense. I could see him getting the ball out quick to Makai Lemon, even if it's not good for the offense. Like, you should be hitting the big boy throws to Devontae Smith. It might be bad for the offense, but it could be good for Makai Lemon in fantasy if this Galaxy brain take makes sense. So how many times out of those 10 universes do you think Lemon outscores Smith?
You're asking someone who is a pretty big Lemon fan, but I'm going to say 2 out of 10. I think there's some legit chances that it happens. Like, I
said 1 out of 10, and then I was like, that's too low. I think it's 2. I think it's 2 is the right answer.
Well, it also doesn't hurt in terms of investing in all these guys, and I think I'm higher on Devonta Smith as well, but it doesn't hurt that the Eagles have an incredibly easy schedule, including the easiest schedule for fantasy receivers. So that's yet another reason, I think, why we can jump back on board this offense. We can feel pretty good about drafting some of these guys and expecting that this receiver room that's going to look a lot different with A.J. Brown out of the mix could still have a ton of success. And I think one of the things that Manny is going to do is actually kind of ask more out of Jalen Hurts. And I think Jalen Hurts is capable of kind of giving more. I don't think that there's a lot of talk about how, he's kind of just fallen back into his ways. Bring that new OC in there. Give that kind of breath of fresh air to this offense. We now have a first-round receiver added to the mix. Let's see what it could do. And I think fantasy-wise, I want to be a part of this Eagles attack this year.
Well, Nick Sirianni is currently consulting ChatGPT about how to motivate and reach his players. So that's our current headline on what's going on with the Eagles offense. So I agree. We definitely need some new ones. And this situation is actually one I'm really excited to track, just the Eagles kind of offensive ecosystem overall. Let's go to your next player here, Marvin Harrison Jr., Cardinals wide receiver. You're ranking currently wide receiver 35, 74th overall. I'm going to guess before you start going here. This one I feel like has more downward mobility than upward mobility, but talk to me about where you're at with MHJ and what you're looking to see out of the Cardinals in training camp.
You are wrong, sir. You guessed wrong there. I actually feel like there's a chance. Does it not feel like everyone has kind of just piled on this poor guy at this point? I know you've had some nice things to say about him over the years and kind of give a little more hope for what he could be if his environment changed. But I keep bringing up the fact that last year, everyone got on the, oh my God, Michael Wilson is absolutely crushing it. And that buries Marvin Harrison Jr. And yet most of those games happened when Marvin Harrison Jr. was injured. When those two guys shared the field together, it was Marvin Harrison Jr. who was still the number one receiver on this team. And yes, Trey McBride is basically the de facto number one receiver. So essentially Marvin Harrison Jr. is the number two receiver in the offense. But regardless, he was the one that was getting more opportunity, was producing a lot more than Michael Wilson was. So I think this is a scenario where we had the rookie year where there was great expectations that he didn't meet. And, some of that is on him, but some of that's also on all of us for putting those great expectations on him. Then last year he gets hurt. And everyone's mad again that he doesn't come through for fantasy. And yet I wonder what this would have looked like if in the second half of the season he was healthy when Jacoby Brissett was just chucking the ball everywhere, throwing so much in comeback mode and putting up these video game-like stats. I think some of that would have gone to Marvin Harrison Jr. And as it was, he was the wide receiver 28 in fantasy points per game. He had 5 top 24 finishes in the 10 games before he got hurt. So it wasn't like he was a complete zero, a complete failure. He was already, for that stage of the season, those 10 games, he was producing better than his ADP this year. It's a new offense. I'm really interested to see what Mike LaFleur can do with this Cardinals attack. I again think that we're going to have this team in comeback mode quite a bit. I don't exactly think this is going to be a playoff contender by any means. So that to me is really interesting. And I think if he's out there in August, looking good. We know that physically he looks great. We saw the picture. He is absolutely shredded right now. If he comes out, if he can stay healthy, we start to get some positive reports of him in this new offense and kind of reestablishing that he is the number one receiver there, with the caveat that Trey McBride is the real number one receiver. But still, I think there is a lot more to come from Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't think the book is written on this guy yet. And yet I think the fantasy community is kind of just pushing him down because people are so burned by the fact that he hasn't come through in his first couple seasons. So I'm kind of interested to see what he can do and whether he can actually get out there, show that he's healthy, and kind of build some momentum going into the season.
Look, you're right. I have been I've been pro MHJ. I've been a little bit of an MHJ apologist for what he's put on film, despite the stats and everything, while also acknowledging that he's obviously just objectively been a disappointment relative to the insane hype, whether that was fair or whatever. He was a 4th overall pick. It's been disappointing relative to that. but I don't think he's been outright terrible, as you mentioned. I have him at wide receiver 31 right now, so I'm a little bit higher than you anyways. And yeah, I mean, maybe we could get you up to wide receiver 31, but I just struggle to see, like, what are we going to hear from Cardinals camp that's like getting us to push this thing up? I mean, it's July 21st, and they're still in a contract impasse with Jacoby Brissett, who's not been with the team all summer, which is like, I mean, if they just had a contract done with Brissett, I think I could be totally fine with, like, hey, maybe he comes up a little bit, like I said, to maybe where I've got him right now. It just would be nice if their starting quarterback was in camp, I guess is the way I would say this.
They'll get that sorted out. For me, at least in my mind, they will. The bigger concern for me that I think fantasy managers should at least keep in mind, and maybe this is what some people are thinking about, and the reason they're holding Harrison down a little bit, is that we're going to see Carson back this year. At some point, we are going to see Carson back. This team's not going to be in the playoff mix late in the season. They're going to want to know what they have in him. So factor that in. What are you thinking from Trey McBride, from Harrison, from Wilson, if Carson Beck is the quarterback of this team during the fantasy playoffs? Because I think that's a reality that's probably going to come true.
Totally. And in that way, it's like, maybe if Beck has a nice summer, maybe that's something to be, not that he's going to be, I don't think he has really a realistic shot to start week 1, but if he has a nice summer, I think that could be a good variable for Harrison, because I do think we've kind of, the thing I would also say too is that I think we've just jumped the shark, and anytime everybody just assumes something, it's like just a natural contrarian in me to push back against it. But everybody assumes this Cardinals team is going to be an absolute joke. They've got the lowest win total in the league, 3.5 projected win total from BetMGM. I just think they're not that bad. Like, I don't think they're that bad. Their offensive line should be better on paper. Like, these pass catchers are talented. Jeremiah Love's in the mix here. Like, their defense isn't hopeless. They were just so banged up last year. I think Nick Rallis did a good job as a defense corner. I think Mike LaFleur is going to be a pretty good play caller. It's not perfect. I'm not saying they're going to be a good team, but if this team was like in the NFC South, I think that they could. I think they would be interesting in the NFC South. They just happen to play in the NFC West. But from a fantasy standpoint, who cares? I do think that this could be like it just couldn't be like it might not be an outright disaster. That's painting with a positive brush here for me as the Cardinals open training camp. I think this has a chance to be functional on offense, which, functional, new scheme, could be good for these guys. I don't know. I'm maybe a little bit wanting to just be a contrarian about this because everybody assumes the Cardinals are going to get, laughed off the field this year.
6 wins, like that would be a victory for them, wouldn't it? Like 6 wins,
sure.
7 wins,
5 wins would be a victory.
Again, I think that would have them out of the playoff picture in the final month where Carson Beck is still coming in. But yes, maybe a little more competitive than a lot of people, perhaps including myself, are giving them credit for.
Well, we're going to throw it a break, but just last point on Carson Beck. And yeah, we're going to throw it a break on this because this is probably a stupid thing to say. But even Carson Beck, like, it was a dumb pick in the 3rd round because I just think, he has no upside to be a starting quarterback. But he wasn't like a complete joke at the college level either. The guy is actually a pretty successful college quarterback. So can he get on the field and, again, still be functional? I'm just going to keep saying that. Can he be functional if he gets on the field for week 15, 16, 17? I don't know. Probably not. But I think maybe, like, I don't know. To me, again, I think the contrarian in me is wanting to push back on some of the just hyper negativity on the Cardinals because I do think these guys are talented, MHJ included. But Boone, no need to respond to my Carson Beck optimism on July 21st. I think all this says
year's Tyler Shuck. This year's Tyler Shuck? Maybe. That's what it sounds like Harmon wants to say.
Oh, my God.
And we're never going to make it to break as Harmon almost falls off his chair. All right.
Okay. That is a sign we definitely need training camp. And we also right now need to take a break so I can recover from this year's Tyler Shuck being Carson Beck. I don't know that I want, as a Shuck head, I don't know that I want to be attached to that. We are going to take that quick break. When we come back, we're talking more players who we're watching heading into training camp. We'll get into that right after this. All right, we're back. And I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Jadarian Price that he was kind of one of the last true home run swings I could see on the board at running back. The other guy I think you can kind of squint at and maybe see it, Boone, is this next player that we are going to talk about here. That is Jonathon Brooks, Carolina Panthers running back. You've currently got him running back 34, 89th overall. This one's easy. Like you could make this a quick one. You don't have to. We never do on this show. But what are you looking to see from Jonathon Brooks out of training camp with the Carolina Panthers?
Yeah, you get the excitement, right? It's such an awesome story. If he can come back from 2 ACL tears, the one that happened in college that might have bumped him out of the first round of the NFL draft and made him a day 2 pick, and then he suffers another one. And you question at that point, like, was this poor guy's career going to be over? No, he's back out there. He was out there in OTAs. I don't know that he's completely 100%, or at least they're not totally letting him run wild yet, but he's going to get his opportunity in OTAs. And we saw last year, I think 2 years ago, Chuba Hubbard played very well. He was a solid fantasy asset. He got the contract extension. Last year, he suffers the injury. We see Rico Dowdle step up and have some really solid fantasy performances. The opportunity is there for Brooks to step in and do what Rico Dowdle did last year and just be the better back in this backfield and potentially take it over. And that would be great to see. But again, this is another one of those ones where I think people should just be really happy for him if he carves out a role in this backfield, right? If he could just establish himself as the number 2 back behind Hubbard early in the season and just be a guy who's, one injury away, maybe an RB3 flex kind of option weekly, that would be awesome to see. And I'm hoping for that. If he ends up going all the way with it and passing Hubbard on the depth chart and emerging as the star back in Carolina, that's just incredible. That would be a wild story. That's almost like, movie worthy if that's how this goes down. There's also a lot of things to consider. We have injuries at both tackle spots in Carolina, so that's something that we're going to have to factor in. Yes, they drafted a tackle in the first round in Monroe Freeling, but and they also signed who it's escaping me here, Rasheed Walker. So they have other guys who can step up, but when you're losing your 2 really, really strong tackles there, that's going to have an impact on the running game. So we're going to have to see how that's playing out. There's a lot of things in this Carolina offense that I think we want to get behind, including Jalen Coker, and yet you'd never really feel totally comfortable. And I think that's where we're at now with Brooks, where he's been pushed up ADP wise, I think, because so many people want to find that next breakout, that next sleeper kind of guy, where now he's going in like the 9th round. If he continues to move higher than that, it's going to be a lot harder to draft him because we don't have a lot of proof of concept yet. We don't know that he's going to be able to stay healthy. We don't know that he is going to end up being the number 1 back in this backfield. So there's a lot to figure out with him, but he is certainly someone that if he has a good August, this guy is going to rise in ADP, and this guy could go on to have a really great fantasy season and hopefully a really great career.
Absolutely. And I think that when we look at Jonathon Brooks, my question to you about what are you looking to see in training? I'm just looking to see the guy play, right? Joe Person, who does a great job covering the team for The Athletic, he's covered the team for a bajillion years now at this point. I'm not calling you old, Joe. He's a friend, so I'm saying this with kindness here. He's covered the team forever. He mentioned it. Jonathon Brooks wasn't even running at full speed in OTAs. He's just it's like he's participating. That's it. Now, in fairness, they only signed AJ Dillon right now, so it's there's a lot of runway for Brooks to be at least a number 2 back, which to your point would be a big win. But if we keep steaming him up, we're going to get into a point where he needs to basically unseat Chuba Hubbard, or at least make this a true timeshare to pay off his ADP. And I'm with you that this Panthers offense is schematically fascinating. We have the tackle injury that we found out today with Taylor Moton, who's a really good player, but he's going to miss probably portions of the season with blood clots. And again, the receivers, this is all an offense that's captained by a quarterback who averages 180 passing yards per game through his career so far. How excited can we get about all of this, even though I do think the Panthers are an interesting team to watch?
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those scenarios where we're chasing these backfields where there's the uncertainty, the ambiguity. This is one of them. We don't know if it's going to be Hubbard and whether he can be healthy and recapture what he did a couple of years ago, or whether it could be Brooks, who finally gets back to full health and shows us what he could be in the NFL. I really, now where they're going, Brooks is the only one that I've taken more of, because Hubbard kind of already is going in a range that I think is a little bit pricey, especially with Brooks potentially breathing down his neck. But this is a guy who could go from being a sleeper to definitely being a league winner. But I think maybe we want to dial back those expectations a little bit. If we could just get him to be a top 25 fantasy back this year, that would be incredible. That would be great.
If we could just get him playing on an NFL field, that would be big progress for Jonathon Brooks, because that's barely happened to this point in his NFL career. We are going to take our last break of the show here, and that is going to do it for us on the Yahoo Sports Network. However, if you're watching along with us on YouTube, keep it right here. We're going over more players that we're watching and could be re-ranking based on what happens in training camp. We will get into that right after this. All right, we're back. We're continuing to go over players who Boone thinks could be on the rise in his rankings based on what we see here in training camp. So, Boone, this next one, another pretty easy one to see how he might be on the rise here. That is George Kittle, tight end, San Francisco 49ers. He's currently your tight end 7, 95th overall. Again, I think pretty obvious what we're looking for from Kittle, but let us know your thoughts on him at this point.
I just continue to be stunned by his ADP. Tight end 10. He's going like 8th, 9th round. That's incredible value for this guy, right? And I think you were on vacation when we did a tight end episode in June, but I mentioned on that show that one of my approaches this year, of course, I want to try to get Brock Bowers or Colston Loveland or, Tyler Warren. Those guys are great. But if I don't, one of my main approaches at tight end this year has been drafting George Kittle and then drafting someone else to pair with him, whether that's Isaiah Likely or Dalton Kincaid, or if I have to go deeper and take Dallas Goedert or Chigakonkwo or someone like that, I will. But by all accounts, it really sounds like Kittle's recovery is coming along well. And remember, Harmon, at some point in the offseason, Kittle talked about this injury and sort of explained, and I'm not going to try to do it again here. I think I did it on an episode in the offseason, but he explained that it was a type of Achilles injury where it was going to allow it to heal quicker. The blood flow to that area was a little stronger than most Achilles injuries. I believe that's what it came down to, and that he could heal up a little faster. We know this guy is just an incredible hard worker, and it really seems like he has a chance to be out there week 1. But even if he's not out there week 1, even if he comes back in week 4 or something like that, to get him where he's going in drafts, that is great. That is a great discount for you. I don't think I have to remind everyone, Kittle's been a top 3 fantasy tight end in per game scoring 7 of the last 8 years. And that 8th year, he was 5th. So this guy has been a top 5 fantasy tight end 8 straight years. After the elite options, and I just mentioned basically the guys that I consider as elite options, if you feel stronger than I do about Trey McBride, he, of course, is in that mix. Tucker Kraft is somebody that if he's healthy, he can kind of fit into this one with Kittle, where if Tucker Kraft's healthy, I think we'll be more excited about him this season because we know how good he can be for fantasy. But even though he's 32 years old, turning 33 in October, I look at Kittle as someone that could get right back up into that top 5, maybe even better, and be that elite fantasy option for you coming off of a very serious injury. That's just the kind of guy he is. That's just the mentality he has. And based on the progress we've seen, I feel pretty good about taking him right now.
Yeah, we want to see that consistent drumbeat of positivity from George Kittle, from the 49ers, maybe even get like some light participation in there from him at training camp. And again, even if he's somebody that you got to wait a few weeks on in the regular season, it's probably going to be worth the wait. I mean, even like the guys like you mentioned, Tucker Kraft, Sam Laporta, they're coming in with injuries, as well into training camp. Now they should be fine. They should, especially Laporta, I think is going to be full go. I saw that today. So still, I mean, Kyle Pitts, like you're taking Kyle Pitts ahead of George Kittle. I don't know. I think that he goes in a very comfortable range right now. And there's probably, he's only going to go up, I think, in ADP if this positivity continues. And in the rankings, there's almost no way I could see him going lower than tight end 7, because we know the deal with tight end. Like once you get into this range, you're probably not locking in like a set it and forget it starter, but he has the upside to be that guy. So it definitely makes sense to pay attention to his, what is like a insane recovery so far. Based on what we've seen so far. Like it's been a pretty wild one here, but I want to get to the next player here because this is one of the true running back competitions we have right now. That is in Washington, but Jacory, Croskey-Merritt, you've got him at running back 38, 100th overall. What are you watching for in the Commanders' backfield, and where do you kind of stand on this group right now?
Well, you were guessing at some of them earlier, right? Is it going to be that I think the guy could move higher, lower? This is one where it could go in any direction, Harmon. Like, would you be shocked at all if he comes out in August, he establishes himself as that lead back? Rachaad White's going to be involved. He is going to be out there, a lot of passing downs. But if Jacory Croskey-Merritt can prove to this coaching staff what they've asked of him to do, which is basically show us that you can be a passing down option as well, that you are not a complete liability, that you're not going to tell the defense exactly what you were doing when you're on the field. If he can come out and do that this summer, he should move up wildly, move up into the top 30, move up maybe, 10, 12 spots in terms of where I have him ranked just at running back. And yet, if he comes out and doesn't get that buzz, we might be talking about another day 3 rookie that the Commanders have this year, Kaytron Allen, coming out and getting it done and taking that early down job in this offense. And then JCM entering his sophomore year, doing basically what he did last year, which was be the third back, be the kind of, another change of pace option out there, playing with 2 other guys, not having a ton of fantasy value until we saw him go off late in the season. And I think that's important because we saw him do that last year. He's going to get a chance to do it again. And fantasy managers will remember, like, he was very good in the fantasy playoffs, really performed well. So let's see him get a shot to do that again. But I don't feel strongly either way, Harmon. I think he's going to be the guy in this backfield. But if you told me that he almost completely fell off the fantasy map in the summer because he didn't get the job done and got passed up by Allen, or White took on a bigger role, none of that would shock me.
Yeah. This says a lot about me as a person, I think, but my thought is just like, this is going to be Rachaad White's backfield. It's so boring. It is not inspiring. He is not a player that's like, some of these runs and some of the cuts that JCM can have, or the idea of Kaytron Allen being kind of a banger back and whatever. But I just think he's going to keep the offense on schedule. He's much better in the passing game than either of these 2 guys. And I just think he ends up playing 50% of the snaps. And even if he isn't a great pick in his own right, he makes this backfield just like you can't start anyone here except for Rachaad White, maybe in PPR formats and kind of as a bye week fill-in, which, by the way, if this passing game is what I imagine it's going to be, where they're hunting for these explosive plays and it's a really dynamic pass game, from a schematic standpoint, that's kind of all they need at running back, is just somebody to keep the quarterback upright and keep the offense on schedule, which I do kind of think lends into Rachaad White's skill set.
Well, I will say this too. We know that late round picks, as much as, we want to tout certain guys and we remember the guys that hit in that range when we take them, very often our late round fantasy picks don't turn into much, right? They get dropped from your roster in the first few weeks. You're picking up the hot waiver wire name. That stuff happens year after year. You could get this Commanders backfield. You could get, you probably don't want to draft all 3 of them, but you could draft 2 of the 3 in the late rounds. They're all going outside of the top 100 picks here. So why not? The 10th round, take JCM. The 11th round, you take Rachaad White, or vice versa, depending how it plays out in your draft. And all of a sudden, you have that backfield fairly locked down, and you're going to probably have someone that's going to have some value in terms of where you're getting them in drafts. So that's a way to play it. That's why I go back to the George Kittle thing when, why not spend a later pick, pair him with another tight end? Now you have these 2 guys, and hopefully one of them turns into something. You can trade him away. Use those late round picks that way. Try to get guys that you could envision having that upside, having these ceilings, and maybe one of these backs in Washington will emerge from this ambiguous backfield and turn into a solid fantasy play. I hope it's JCM. I'm playing it like it's going to be JCM, but I will admit I've also done that move that I just said, where I'm taking JCM and Rachaad White back-to-back in drafts.
Oh man, that tweet that we just showed from Ian Hartitz about what if Rachaad White is this year's Javonte Williams is exactly why I'm saying the Rachaad White thing here, because I was so dismissive of Javonte Williams, like, Jaden Blue, baby, so much faster, more explosive. And now I kind of think that the inclination would be like, yeah, we know who Rachaad White is, whatever, who cares? Yeah, he's good on passing downs. He's just not explosive, whatever, who cares? But JCM, he's faster. He had some of these big weeks. So he's like, I don't know. Could just be. I like this call. I like this call, especially if the Commanders' offense really hits the ground running with David Blau. But yeah, you're right. Again, very similar to your thought on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like the right strategy here from a fantasy perspective is to take shots on these guys because one of them probably, I don't think there's a scenario where both of them are fantasy viable. In that situation, neither of them are fantasy viable, but I think that one could be if they consolidate the work here, right?
Well, and to tie it into Ian's tweet there, one of the mistakes I think we made with that Cowboys backfield last year wasn't doing exactly what I'm talking about, which is they were all going so cheap. Why not take shots on a couple of them? And I think often we got more excited about the younger names like Jaden Blue, and we weren't looking at the guy in Javonte Williams, but you could have taken them both outside of the top. You know, they were going Javonte Williams. I was taking him kind of reluctantly in like the 10th round last year. It's the same kind of scenario here. So it's a smart comment by him. But also, I think another reason, if you want to cover your bases, take two of these guys, and you're going to have a very good shot to emerge with the Commanders lead back.
Well, we'll certainly have to figure out what Jacory Croskey-Merritt's thoughts are on Louis Vuitton cleats before we go any further with him being the Jaden Blue of this backfield. But final kind of official one here on the board, Kyler Murray, quarterback, Minnesota Vikings. You've currently got him QB14, 114th overall. I think obviously what we're looking for in terms of him in training camp, is he going to be the starting quarterback? What is the quarterback battle? Boone, I'm curious if you've bought into this notion that there actually is a quarterback battle in Minnesota, because the Vikings sure are beating it over our heads that no, this is a quarterback battle. Even today, Ian Rappaport came out and said, this is going to go all the way to training camp. That's the way all the way to the season opener. That's the way this Vikings brass is looking at this quarterback competition between Kyler Murray and JJ McCarthy. There was also, I saw a report that they still believe in Max Brosmer. I'm like, man, either they are really trying, either they are really trying to sell this to like keep these young guys as confidence or whatever, or Kyler Murray looks horrendous in practice. Like those are my only two conclusions here. Cause I mean, Kyler Murray's worst season last year, Boone, was last year. And even then he had a 4.72 adjusted net yards per attempt, 37th out of 45 qualifying quarterbacks. McCarthy was still worse. Like, so even in Kyler Murray's worst season, what McCarthy was last year was still significantly worse than Kyler Murray. So where do you stand on this as a quarterback battle? Do you believe it is a quarterback battle?
No, I think that's all coach speak. I mean, go back and look at, Justin Jefferson's interviews and the way he's talked about McCarthy and Murray showing up and all that sort of stuff. I think that sends you in the right direction, which is this team is excited to have a veteran out there. And they don't need a superstar. They just need a guy that go out there and keep this offense moving and not make as many mistakes as McCarthy was making last year. Perhaps like this kind of coach speak, maybe they're just trying to keep JJ McCarthy in it, keep him, interested, and maybe down the road he could eventually be the guy, but I don't think there's a chance that they go into week one with him as the starter. How could they possibly? And fantasy-wise for Kyler, like I know last year wasn't good. We talked about it a bunch. In the games that he played before he got hurt, he didn't even post a top 15 fantasy week. Like he was just downright bad, no doubt. But before that, every other season, 6 seasons in the NFL, was a top 12 fantasy quarterback every single one of those years. And you can tell me, Harmon, if I'm doing it again, if I'm just putting too much faith in Kevin O'Connell and just being like, hey, he's got another quarterback. It's a veteran guy. He's going to be able to coach him up. I feel like with what Murray's done in fantasy, with what KOC has done in that with that offense, with the veteran quarterbacks that he's had come in, who were much worse than Murray. We're talking about guys like Nick Mullins who came in and were like decent fantasy options for a stretch. I think we're going to see Murray get a lot more comfortable in the offense as the summer goes along. Let's face it, he's learning a new offense. You expect him to know it like the back of his hand in May or June? No, but by the end of the summer, he is going to have this figured out. He is going to be able to run that attack, and this team is going to be much better for it because JJ McCarthy showed last year he's not the answer, and he would have to make some massive strides for him to even have a chance to pass Murray on the depth chart this year. So I think it's going to be Kyler. I don't think it's going to be a battle at all. And right now, Kyler ADP-wise going off the board is the QB 17. I think he could definitely
Yeah.
flirt with top 12 numbers. I have him at QB 14, but yeah, he's certainly in the mix there as one of those late round quarterbacks that you could take a shot on. And if he does anything like he did in those first 6 seasons, you got great value and you got a guy that you could start all year long.
So I have definitely kind of been, I don't know, introspective about like how, and you and I talked about this at the combine, right? Way back in February, if you can remember that reality, like how good is this Vikings offense really? And even like, all right, Juwan Jennings is a third receiver. That doesn't move the needle all that much for me. They didn't add anything really of consequence to the backfield. And like, I still think Jordan Addison is a little bit overrated outside of Justin Jefferson. Like, I think this is Jefferson's great. He's the rising tide that lifts all boats here. But otherwise, I think this personnel is like, it's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad, but I think it's maybe a touch overrated. We'll see what the offensive line looks like this year after being a bit of a disappointment last year. Obviously, injuries had a lot to do with that. And I do think Kevin O'Connell, like, I'm not saying I'm down on Kevin O'Connell, but he's another one. It's like, we've given him a lot of credit for reviving Sam Darnold, and then like Sam Darnold was probably better in Seattle than he was in Minnesota. So I don't know if that really means anything, but it's just, these are things I'm thinking about, and just the way they play on offense, they kind of need to be a little bit more serious about the ground game. And I do think their passing game is will always be very volatile because of how downfield oriented it is, which, by the way, if that's Kyler Murray as the quarterback, I think that can work for Kyler, even if he's not going to access some of those over the middle throws that Sam Darnold did when he was the guy in 2024. Some of those big downfield outbreakers, the go routes and the post routes, like that can still be a real big hit for Kyler Murray as a fantasy quarterback. I think I'll only start to really get nervous that they're serious about this as a competition and that like there's something really going on here if we get past the first preseason game and they still haven't named Kyler Murray the week 1 starter. Then I think we can really be like, actually, you know what? There's something going on here.
We'll get a pretty good indication, I think, from the beat writers. Even if they don't officially announce that he's going to be the starter, I think we're going to get a pretty good indication in the first couple of weeks here at training camp how this is going to play out and whether Kyler looks good enough. Because as long as he looks decent, I think he's going to get the job. It's also crazy that you look at Kyler, some of the interviews since he got to Minnesota, that Kyler now looks like the mature veteran and that JJ McCarthy is kind of that wild and that, unprofessional in some of his interviews, that it's made Kyler now look like he is this very composed veteran quarterback. It's just funny to see how things change from year to year. And I think this Vikings offense, from what we saw last year, you mentioned the injuries in the offensive line, the bad quarterback play. I know you've talked down some of the players, the skill position guys they have there. I still think it's a pretty good unit. And I think we're going to see a bounce back year from these guys. And as long as Kyler, again, is just average, he doesn't have to be a superstar that elevates everybody. He's just got to be good enough that he can keep the trains on time, keep this offense moving. And I think he's going to be able to do that in Minnesota.
Well, we'll see. Maybe we can revive the JJ McCarthy is the next Patrick Mahomes take if otherwise that doesn't happen, Only the real diehards.
It wasn't quite that. It wasn't quite that, but all right.
I know
we've reached the end of the show when
only 5 people even know what I'm talking about, so don't even bother to bring it up. Okay, real quick, you do have one more bonus one you want to hit, I know, before we get out of here. Stefon Diggs, who obviously is not on a team. You've currently got him wide receiver 52. Very obvious he could be a riser here soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple, and it's the same approach that we take when you're doing best ball drafts before the NFL draft has happened, and you go out and you take the top rookies because you just know when they find a landing spot, the odds are pretty good that their ADPs are going to rise as people get more excited about them being in a specific offense. It's the same here with Diggs. As soon as he signs somewhere, whether it is Washington to be the number 2 receiver there, Baltimore has been mentioned in the mix, the Chiefs potentially, I've heard the Rams thrown out there. There's a lot of teams vying for his services, but as soon as he signs, we are going to see his ADP rise, and you want to get him now. Take that value and just cash that in and enjoy the fantasy return that you're going to get from that. I have him, like I said, you said wide receiver 52. I have him going as a 10th round pick in my rankings. Right now, he's going a lot deeper than that in drafts, I think, outside the top 150 picks. So take him where you can get him. You don't have to take him where I have him ranked there. You can take him a little bit later than that and just enjoy the return, because it is maybe the most obvious fantasy return that you're going to get the moment that news drops that he signed somewhere.
No question. You mentioned it, like Commanders. I don't think he really would become like, I don't think he would move Terry McLaurin down if he signs there. I don't think if he signed with the Ravens, we move Zay Flowers down at all. They're both pretty open depth charts. Chiefs and Rams, that would be interesting. That would be like worth a discussion. I would love to see him in Kansas City. That's been my spot all along. But the Rams, it would shake things up in fantasy. There's no question, but it does make sense. Like, they don't have a lot of depth at that position. And if they want to kind of zig when everyone's zagging into the multiple tight end thing that they did last year, it wouldn't be completely insane. By the way, I also could just see Diggs not getting signed for a long time. Like, he's got a lot going on off the field. And obviously he proved himself on the field last year, but still got a lot going on off the field. And there's just not a ton of wide receiver rooms that, like, there's a screaming need. It might take an injury here in the next few weeks, which is certainly possible as well.
Well, I'm not suggesting he's going to come back and be a top 24 receiver or anything like that, but he could come back and be a wide receiver 3 flex option. I mean, when he joined the Texans a couple years ago, they had Nico Collins, they had Tank Dell, who was still healthy at that point, and Diggs was still a decent fantasy play before he got hurt in that offense. So I think it's such an obvious move to go and get him, throw him on your bench. And if it doesn't work out, if he doesn't sign before the season, you want to make a different move, you drop him, because where you're taking him, there is zero risk involved. It's at the very end of your draft.
Totally. Yeah, but you're right. Either way, he's a guy that in the next few weeks is certainly going to rise up rankings. So if you want to take him now, especially if you're doing basketball drafts. Boone, I appreciate you, buddy. This was super fun. You made me actually crack up on the show with the Carson Beck comment. So I think we got to put that one in the highlight reel, the Boone Harmon highlight reel.
I feel like I'm going to have to get a shirt made or something. I'm going to see you a couple times over the next month or so. Maybe I'll bring a shirt to you that Carson Beck is this year's Tyler Shuck. We'll have to get that done.
Terrific. Yes, as Boone mentioned, I'm going to see you here in the next 2 days. You and I will be together at the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio this weekend. Can't wait to see you, my friend. Can't wait to see everybody there. So if you're going to be at the expo, definitely make sure to come say hi to me and Boone. We're both very approachable. Boone will give you his autograph if you ask for it. If you ask really nicely, he will be willing to sign if you print out his rankings, he's definitely willing to sign those. He's actually looking forward to signing those.
I don't know about that, but I might buy you a drink at the bar.
Well, I mean, I'm hoping that offer stands for me, pal. That's what really matters here. Yeah, I can't wait to see Boone. Can't wait to see everybody at the Fantasy Football Expo. But before we have that, we've got one more episode coming out this week, because we are Tuesday and Thursday right now before we get into the daily schedule in August. So on Thursday, as promised, Zane Dahani of Fantasy Points joins me to identify the 12 biggest fantasy storylines and questions we want answered in training camp. Zane has been doing great work tracking all the drum beats from OTAs. We're going to see what we want to know as those build into training camp before we finalize our fantasy draft rankings. Until then, we are out.